I make a lot of save idea videos. Most of them are recommending smaller teams that you might have missed, but sometimes the best teams are the best teams. From Manchester United's chaos to the hidden potential in two of Europe's sleeping giants, today I'll be sharing 4 of the most highly rated save ideas that I think are really fun, and hopefully you'll be able to try one of these and love it as much as I do. Okay, so to be honest, I'm also going to be counting some 4 and 4.5 star teams as 5-star for this video. There's actually only 7 max rated teams in the game, and I think most people would admit that Manchester City, Real Madrid, Leverkusen and Inter Milan are in pretty good positions and don't need rebuilding. So let's instead dip down a level into the murky waters of the 4-star clubs, where we can find teams that actually need some rebuilding. I don't actually think that this first save needs much introduction. After experimenting with giving Erik ten Hag £250 million to spend, Manchester United are probably about to do the exact same with Ruben Amorim. Will he spend it on former Sporting players like Ten Hag did with Ajax? Well, I'm not quite sure, but that's the thing about Manchester United rebuilds that make them so fun. You can literally do anything you want and it makes sense just because of how weird Manchester United are. So let's analyse the Manchester United squad. The squad actually only has 3 centre-backs you'd probably want to keep, plus maybe Harry Maguire. Your 2 starting central defensive midfielders are both very slow 32-year-olds, and you only have 1 winger that can actually grow above 82 overall. The squad is in a terrible place, and that's why it needs rebuilding. Personally, I'd be recalling Jadon Sancho from his loan in January and developing him to complement Garnacho and Højlund as much as I can. In fact, the classic Ferguson 4-4-2 seems to suit United pretty well this year. I put the share code on screen right here, but also my tactics database has a bunch of other Ferguson tactics if you fancy using a different era. Anyway, with Sancho as the new Ryan Giggs and Garnacho as the new David Beckham, realistically you're also going to want a box-to-box Roy Keane type aggressive player to feature next to your playmaker Bruno Fernandes in central midfield. I think this 4-4-2 would work really well, but if you'd prefer to go for Ruben Amorim's tactics, use this share code or copy his Sporting team sheet, and this is going to need a lot more work. The first thing you'll want to do is probably retrain Garnacho to be an attacking midfielder, and then you'll definitely need 2 new wide midfielders who can defend. I think Sporting's Matthias Reis would be a solid pick on the left, and he also can cover centre-back, so that's 2 of your weaknesses covered pretty solidly. I'll leave the rest of the rebuild up to you, but it doesn't matter whether you want to be the second Alex Ferguson or the first Ruben Amorim. I know that Manchester United is a super fun rebuild, and one that I definitely recommend you try. Now, I can't believe I'm including Juventus in a rebuild video, but here we are. These guys were so dominant for the past 2 decades in Italy, but since the Pirlo, Pogba and Chiellini era, they have faded to become the 2nd or 3rd best team most seasons. That's still really impressive, don't get me wrong, but Juventus should be first and winning titles. They should be in Champions League finals and going on 20-game winning streaks. Anyway, why does this team even need rebuilding? It's fairly young, most of the players are actually under the age of 28, it's got potential, the wages are under control, and the tactics seem to be sound. So what can you actually rebuild with this club? Well, the first thing any Juventus manager should do is sign Conceição on a permanent deal. This guy's got so much talent, and he can become one of the most elite inside forwards on the entire game. With him cutting in from the right, you'll want a more traditional winger on the left and a target man in the middle, which Yildiz and Vlahovic are perfect for. All 3 have room to improve by a ton, and I've still not actually recommended a single part of why you should rebuild this club. So let's get on to that then, and it was quite shocking to see how much of this team was actually on loan. You have your starting goalkeeper, you have your 2 best right midfielders, and your starting centre-back all loaned in from other clubs. These are the 4 positions that you need to look into signing players for before the end of the first season. Alongside the front 3, I'd also be looking to push someone like Koopmeiners back a little bit, maybe as a half winger on the right, and move Locatelli to the left of a midfield 3. This means that you now have room to sign a brand new attacking midfielder, and you can also sell Weston McKennie for quite a lot of money. Signing Rayan Cherki is a little bit of a career mode cliche at this point, but he'd be ideal as a shadow striker running from deep that would make the most of some of Vlahovic's hold-up play. Within 2 to 3 years, this team will have grown enough to be Champions League contenders, and depending on the defence and the goalkeeper that you go for, could even go on to win the whole thing. It's not the biggest rebuild, sure, but it should still be fun to build one of the most historic teams in Italy back up to the top of Europe. So while I was shocked about how far Juventus have fallen, I wasn't so shocked by how far Valencia have fallen. They've had one of the worst owners in the world for nearly a decade, and he was so bad he even went as far as to hire Gary Neville as manager. So for this rebuild, I would give yourself a small takeover, maybe 10 or 20 million pounds, and then I would make it a storyline that the club was finally removed from Peter Lim's grubby hands. But what makes Valencia actually fun to use? They have a squad that seems to decline every single year and quite a lot of debt, and this might sound like a bad career mode save, but both of these are actually reasons you should play as Valencia. To be fair, if I was to do yet another Valencia save like I've done tons of in the past, I would definitely be getting Rafa Benitez involved somehow. He could be your new owner, or he could be the manager that you're playing as. Either way, he's got a big variety of tactics he's used in the past that he can replicate. He's got a ton of history with Valencia, and just like the club, his reputation has never been lower. He's used a narrow 4-2-3-1 when he was manager of Valencia, with a focus of getting the most out of his playmaker Pablo Aimar. I don't think that anyone in this squad is going to be as good as Pablo Aimar was just yet, but if you've given yourself enough money in your takeover, I think Gabby Veiga is literally the ideal first signing. Not only could he get as good as Aimar, he could be the Aimar in your tactic while also being Spanish and not really wanted by the largest Spanish clubs like Atletico Madrid or even the next tier, which is clubs like Sociedad. Valencia is the right fit for him, and within a couple of seasons this team will have grown enough to probably be top 4 contenders, and depending on who else you buy, could even be competing for La Liga again. While Valencia are lower rated than Manchester United and Juventus, and are probably actually only 4 stars, they're just as, if not more fun, than any of the teams that are higher rated than. Valencia were one of my favourite teams on some of the older FIFA games, and if you do think back to older FIFA games, who was the one team that could challenge PSG for the French title? If you're really old like me, you might have said Lyon or even Montpellier, but I'm talking about AS Monaco, who are actually now the 5th highest rated side in France. How has that happened? Why has that happened? And how can we fix them? Well, let's find out. Even as recently as 2019, Monaco was spending £200 million on signings. Sure, most of this money came from selling Mbappe the year before, but I've never seen a team waste so much money in one window. Ben Yedder is now on trial, but not at a football club, he's in French court. Gelson Martins plays in Greece rather than in France, Maripan plays for a mid-table Serie A team, and Benjamin Lecomte actually spent more years away from Monaco on loan than he did starting in goal, which is what he was signed to do. The team is actually doing quite well this year in real life. They were fully in the title hunt until 3 weeks ago, and then they lost to Angers and Nice back to back. But the squad in FIFA is actually pretty bad. They have one player that you would probably call quick, Crepin Diatta, and 2 or 3 players that have potential to start for the next level of teams like PSG. If you want Monaco to get back to that level, you're going to need to sign some pretty high potential players. If we think about tactics quickly, you could keep Adi Huta's high pressing style, and I mean that would work really well against some of the less talented teams in the domestic league, but I'd recommend you switch this up and go for a tactic that can actually dominate games and dominate possession. I'd definitely suggest looking at Leverkusen as an example of how to rebuild in this way. They have 3 defenders who can defend and build up, they have 2 midfielders that will bully any opposition playmaker, and then they have 3 attackers who can use pace or passing to try and beat worse teams. In fact, I'd say that the Leverkusen tactic actually fits Monaco like a glove. You've got Golovin and Minamino who can play like Wirtz and Hoffman in the creative roles. You've got Embolo, who's pretty similar to Boniface in his style of play, but you'll most likely need to invest in 2 wing-backs, a centre-back, and a midfielder that's more similar to Granit Xhaka. You could buy Seiko Fofana when his Saudi loan ends in Season 1, or you could rescue someone like Ibrahim Sangare from his failing Nottingham Forest transfer. There's so many options yet again with AS Monaco. You could give yourself a huge takeover and do it that way. You could build up trying to find the next Mbappe in your academy, or you could even try and sign Moneyball players and do it totally different from how Monaco have done it in real life in the past. If you try any of these 4 saves, let me know over on Discord. Feel free to tag me in any kind of threads if you want to send me some screenshots, and hopefully you'll agree that one of these saves is perfect for you. If you prefer lower rated teams, then check out some of my other videos that's in the playlist that's on screen right now, but hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you soon. Cheers and goodbye.